Welcome everyone to the Return2Play Podcast. I'm Aaron. I'm here with Dane, our Director of Fitness here at St Pete Calisthenics. We're going to pick up where we left off the last time we were here chatting, talking about the St Pete Calisthenics core classes and how a lot of the Return2Play curriculum elements are going to just be intertwined into a lot of our classes in general. It's just not as individualized as a program, but I wanted our classes here at St Pete Calisthenics to really have the benefits of all of what I've used to help people the last 10 years kind of trickled in just as a array of things to find fun in your fitness journey versus it always being just lifting weight a little heavier than you did last week. So we talked about animal flow already a little bit last time. We talked about the balance class a little bit last time as well. Both of those are kind of the really ground pieces of the ground up approach that we want to have here, which is improving our connection to the ground through our hands and through our feet and the proprioceptive improvements that tend to come along with those practices. I know, Dane, you took a steel mace flow class recently with Julio for the first time, and you got to experience a little bit of his flair with it. Let's maybe talk about the steel mace class next and where you kind of landed after your first one.
Steel mace was cool. It was like something that I've been exposed to in the past. I think both you and I have both been exposed to it for quite a few years now, I feel like, but I never was like really coached on it or like led through anything. So I just kind of picked it up, saw stuff online, and you do some swings, you do some 360s, and like I was aware you can do lunges and squats and different things, but I never was led through like a flow like that. I think there's always value to like getting coached on it by someone that knows a lot more about it than you. So I wanted to take the class and experience it. It was like a nice little base warm up, and then like each little movement that we did built into the broader scope that we did towards the end, which is like the full flow. So that was kind of the deal. But it was nice to get like some rotation, some twisting, like lateral and side to side movements that you don't always get in regular programs.
I think you told me it felt kind of like you were flowing with it for the first time, whereas maybe what you were doing beforehand was kind of like what I was doing, where it was a little more just swings, some stability drills, and not as much of that fluid motion with the mace, which is where I think Julio definitely differentiates from what we've known the mace as. He adds the more traditional and fully intricate system that comes along with being certified with a steel mace flow practice. So if you haven't taken one of his classes, he does teach on Saturdays here at 10 a.m. currently. Definitely suggest you go take some of his. My class is a little bit different. We might add some of the flow elements in for sure, but I do also incorporate some of the mobility and stability drills that I have been using for a long time. People with their shoulder pain and their imbalances in the shoulders, because it being an offset tool forces all of the stability muscles to have to work in unison in some capacity. So when you have those little pieces where something's taking over a little too much, working on some really basic stability drills, just holding the mace at first can be enough to just start to spread that protective tension out and put it in a little bit more of a happy state so that you can start to explore some swings eventually and really get that joint capsule to open up and it not be impinging on stuff anymore.
I think one of the big takeaways that I liked was even just holding the mace like this, the idea was not to just sit there with it, but to actively be either like spreading it, like your hands don't move, but you're grabbing it and spreading it as hard as you can, or crushing it in as hard as you can. And then if you implement that into any of the movements, even if you were just to be holding it, actively holding it, and everything's firing through your shoulders, like body's shaking a bit if you actually apply yourself. So like the isometric tension was a key piece, which I really like.
That's right. And that's one of the recurring themes, and a lot of what I realized was helping people was all these different ways to involve isometrics in fashions that weren't just wall sits and medicine ball squeezes and stuff like that, but it's a much more functional forward type of practice that is actually more enjoyable as you get good at it, that you'll actually stick with it for years and years, hopefully, is the goal.
There's and there's a little bit of leg component to it as well, because we did for sure some lunges and some Cossack squats, but then kind of what you mentioned before of like you go to the gym and you might do some lunges or you might do some squats, but it's like, all right, now I'll just add a little bit more weight and I'll do lunges again, I guess. But like this one is like you're doing a thing, you're doing a swing, you're going off to the side, doing a Cossack squat, and then coming back out and going back into a lunge and then doing an uppercut. So like the flow of it, and then by the end, like you're kind of having fun. By the end, you don't realize like, oh, I just did a crap ton of lunges on that leg. Like no wonder my legs are feeling a little sore.
That's
so
right.
That's cool.
Fun first, fitness is the byproduct.
Exactly, yeah.
So yeah, you don't realize it, but by the end, you definitely did 30 or 40 lunges in each of those positions, and you did, some of them are more of the awkward ones, like the curtsy lunge and the Cossacks, and it hits those planes of motion that tend to be often neglected in most people's training because you can't just easily add lots of weight to it. They tend to be more range of motion forward and stability demand heavy.
Yeah, and then you mix in that like lunge with doing something with your upper body, but at the same time you have that crush or that spread.
And you're twisting.
Yeah, so everything is tied in together. There's not, if you're doing it right, at least from my one class that I took, nothing is really just relaxing. No part of your body. If you feel relaxed when you're doing it, then something's probably a little bit off. You need to be more active and find tension. So it's cool. Yeah.
And your balance will be way better when you realize how many different tension points there need to be. And that steel mace class also involves a good amount of balance. So it helps us understand the foot components in the balance class, but then you get up onto your feet and you add the mace. Now we're balancing with an offset tool. So your body's having to activate 10 times more than it was without having to do that, because the balance class is just you on a little balance beam. The steel mace flow is going to be on the flat ground, so it should be a little bit easier in that regard, but we're adding the offset weight. So now we're getting a little bit of that extra stimulus to those tendons and ligaments in the shoulders, especially if you're starting to really pause and hold those positions in those end ranges of motion. Sometimes I have to get people to really pop that elbow all the way through so they can create the engagement down the back.
Actually squeeze through, right? Yeah.
And you're just feeling the entire upper body is tense and isometric. So it's three-dimensionally squeezing that entire shoulder girdle, and you're balancing all at the same time. So
yeah, you're getting that twist, like getting the rotation that most people don't get, and then you're getting the active like squeeze, and then basically you have the bad posture, so then you're forcing yourself isometrically to lock in a posture position through your shoulders, and it's like all of it mixed together, but without being too boring where you're just kind of like, let's do this exercise.
It feels quite badass, actually. You're doing some like warrior training drills.
I feel like a ninja for some of it.
Yeah.
And I think he mentioned the flow, the name of the flow was like the Ninja Hunter, I think is what he called it.
Okay, yeah.
So I was like, oh, Ninja Hunter, yeah. So basically, fun. I was like, ninjas are pretty stealthy and cool, but if you're hunting the ninja, you gotta be even more stealthy and more cool than the ninja is. So they brought up my inner like 10-year-old.
Right, and that's what we're trying to do. Bring adults back to the playground, find ways to move our bodies that enhance your abilities as you age, not limit them. I think one of the huge elements I loved about the steel mace was its shoulder benefits, but also the spinal health benefits. Same goes for animal flow. Great for your shoulders, great for your spine. You're getting all the good corkscrew movement that the spine is meant to have, and I think that's where the resilience really comes from, as gymnastics and all has just been recently pointed out to have such a good longevity improvement basis. I think they're kind of tying it to inverting upside down a bunch, flipping and rolling around, so the vestibular system, the fluid in the body, all has to get jostled around a little bit. And animal flow does that, and steel mace, I would argue, does that, because there's some components where you're dipping down towards the floor and you're adding a lot of these kind of centripetal forces, I guess is more a good way to describe it. So lots of good things happening, and you're just having fun.
Yeah, I mentioned last time we talked about calisthenics as the main class, and obviously it's the overarching theme of the place, but then if you're just a natural extension of that, or at least how we were defining it, is that it's bodyweight movement, essentially, calisthenics. So then just like different tiers of it, as you have your animal flow, you have your balance classes, you have different forms of handstand and yogas and things like that. But then steel mace, we're adding in the object. So that's where we get a little bit of external factor in terms of the forces around. But yeah, starting to mix in some different stuff, and you get maybe more of a leg element as well.
And that, a lot of people ask us with the calisthenics thing, is there enough to do for the legs? And that's another reason I think I liked having the steel mace in there, is because it does add a good amount of lower body into the mix. So it's not just feeling like all you're doing is pistol squat variations and Cossack squats until you die.
Yeah, I'd say if you do it right, then there is implementation of all of it. Because then we would still do things like Nordic curls, and it's just not necessarily like heavy deadlifts, I guess. And we're still doing a lot of different hinging. Like, we still implement the single leg like RDLs and different things like that.
And I would say there's still a pretty good number of exercise selections out there. It's just playing with more full ranges of motion and end range of motion drills versus just loading lots of weight.
Yeah.
It's more...
I could argue that, not necessarily that everyone needs to do a pistol or should do pistols and all that, but if you spend the actual time to develop out the pistol, like take the component parts and develop it, you'd benefit way more from doing that than just loading up more weight and trying to back squat more weight every week. So then there's an element of flexibility and mobility and strength in different positions, which most people are lacking. Like we see a lot of tight hamstrings, a lot of tight hip flexors and weak hip flexors, and then just the ability to like hold their leg out. It's bending because they're like everything is tight in here. So just developing that out, and then that's just a straight leg. So then you have the other leg going into full flexion, essentially knee flexion and hip flexion and ankle flexion. Like if you put all those pieces together, then it could take a long time to develop that out for somebody.
It can. And it all goes back to just trying to make the body the most functional that it can. And as you improve throughout those variations of the pistol squat, you're going to be improving all of those different joint mobility capacities up to a point where you can get on and off the ground without worrying about it. You can go get into the car that's maybe lifted up a little high. You don't have to be afraid to climb up into the car, because I've helped plenty of clients who have already been in situations where they say no to a lot of those types of things. And if you're trying to travel, especially to somewhere that maybe has small airplanes you got to take and little car or mule rides that have either weight limits or capacities that you have to be mindful of, size and or like hiking a certain amount of stairs. I know my mom and grandma have done plenty of cruises where they're like, yep, the excursion today is 2,500 steps, and on the top of this spot there's a nice viewpoint, and I guess if you can't do the stairs, we'll see you guys at lunch when we get back. And like, all right, well, you made it over to the place, but you can't go enjoy the thing. Yeah. Because your body is no longer in a position where it will allow you to do that. And they don't have ADA compliance people in Croatia or wherever it might be that you're visiting. So
even just walking through the airport, you get at one of the gates and it's like, I gotta go to another terminal, get on this and transfer over, get a train, like all this stuff. Yeah. It's like crazy. Actually, I was just in Atlanta airport and I did a crazy thing where you take the stairs, the actual stairs, not the escalator.
Oh, and you go up twice as fast as the people in the escalator?
Yeah, they're just flying past all the people because they just get on and they're just like standing there letting it as they go up, like on their phone. And I'm just like, but I kind of make it a point just to do that, because like you could go on the escalator and just ride it up and be lazy, but I'm like, I just got off of a whatever long flight where I was just sitting in the airport and then sitting on the plane, and like if I'm transferring, then I could walk a little bit extra because I know I'm probably not going to get to the gym today. So like walk a little bit longer, don't take the train, like actually walk the distance, don't take the escalator, actually go up the stairs. So make it a point to do that. But then you see people that they can't do that, obviously, because they have the carts and people pushing them through. Like you see it every time you're in the airport, you see something like that.
You understand the benefit of those movement nutrients speckled in throughout those periods of extended sitting. I did see something recently about them starting to consider grants for airports to put movement spaces in airports.
Okay.
Did you see that yet?
No. I always thought
that
days ago. Somebody needs to do that.
It was just a few days ago. It was RFK and like Paul Saladino, I think, that posted a picture about it and trying to make that officially happen, which I think would be great. Because as you're feeling, your body needs to move when you've been sitting for 3, 4, 5, or 8 hours on the plane. Those joints are typically screaming. And you could have a layover that's 3 or 4 hours long and go get a workout in. They have showers there for you to rinse off before you get back in. And
yeah, even just like a place to stretch. We're not such a weirdo.
Just some rubber bands and a couple of yoga balls.
I've been so many times I'll do like a little split squat with my foot up on the chair or something, like just in the normal terminal area, and everyone's always like, "What is he doing?"
I'll just sit in a deep squat for 10 minutes. Yeah. Tyler might sit in a chair and I'll just deep squat next to her like that.
Open my hips and then I'm like texting like this, and everyone's like, "Was that weirdo over there?"
Well, we're here to make it not weird. To be able to do that, I think it's one of Kelly Starrett's challenges to be able to sit like that for 10 minutes.
Yeah, that was old.
Have you tried it before?
That was an old thing, yeah.
It's a while back. I think I was able to do it. It was just super
burns
good burn in the tibs.
Yeah. Just like, you don't think about that, or most people don't think about that, at least.
That's what's holding you from falling on your butt.
That level of tension in through there, yeah. But yeah, that's a good thing. I've been trying to do that more with my clients. It's just like get in the bottom of squat, hang out deep.
That should be your resting position. The deepest
squat, yeah. Just hang
we should make that the default resting position here once people can achieve it.
In class, like you do a set, yeah.
All right, everyone, hold your deep squat while you get your water. Water break means a deep squat. Hold. They might not like that.
Yeah, they might not. That would be probably more rest than I give them usually, honestly.
That's fine.
I'm like, all right, we'll rest your front levers for a second. All right, come over here. We're gonna do this
completely opposite area.
Sliders across the gym while you rest. And they're like, well, what do you mean while we rest? Like,
while that part
rests. Down and back. All right, your arms should be fresh now. All right, we're going back over here. Like, oh, what? Good stuff. What's next? We talked about flow.
I think our primal conditioning would be potentially the next one.
Okay, sure.
It kind of combines a little bit of a number of what we offer here in a bit more of a volume and cardio forward fashion.
Yeah, we were just talking about reworking it a little bit from maybe what it was or used to be, or
it had kettlebells in it originally already, but I think the kind of crawling animal movements, not necessarily animal flow, but some other primal movement forms were trickled in. But I think now we're going to consider adding just some standard animal flow drills, kettlebell drills, or steel mace drills in a circuit style fashion. Maybe a little bit of calisthenics here on the floor.
I feel like for me I feel like maybe people think of it as like, I don't know what they think of it, but when they hear primal, sometimes I feel like people get like, whoa, you're just crawling around like a monkey the whole time. And it's like, well, it's a little bit more than that.
We're using our hands as, objects on the ground in a lot of ways, yes.
There might be some crawling elements, but then it's a good class to put everything together from what we just talked about. So then you have the steel mace, like you said, the animal flows, like you said, but maybe less like higher level versions of it. So like more simpler forms. That way you can do interval training with it. And then maybe pieces of calisthenics and pieces of kettlebells, and then you have like a nice little circuit built in, things like that. Yeah.
So like we may be not learning new skills in that class, but we're picking a skill that you're proficient at as your piece for the drill of that day. So some people's might look a little different than the people next to them, but you'll be doing the basic same movement drill with whatever length of time imposed.
I feel like you could, if you were to make a potential criticism of like calisthenics only training, it would be, well, there's not as much resistance, like weightlifting component to it, and you might not get your heart rate up as much as like going for a run or something. Like there's not that breathing cardio component. So then now that class is an opportunity to add that in, where now we have a little bit of weightlifting components to it. You might be doing some goblet squats or deadlifts and kettlebell swings and swinging a mace, and then next thing you know, you're jumping into a kick through position, holding yourself in different positions, like interval style training. Not necessarily a hit, but a little bit flirting the line with that.
I think the calisthenics is like a skill heavy class where you may be only going to get a couple of reps clean because you're usually pushing that skill frontier a little bit. In conditioning class, we're not going to be pushing your hardest variation. We're going to back off just a little so that you can get 30 to 45 seconds of solid reps in, or a hold of that position. So
that would make you better as well, because let's say you can hold a tuck, or you can hold the back lever. That's pretty hard skill for most people to get. Let's say you can hold the full version, but then if you're in conditioning class and you're going to do back levers, you would probably regress to a tuck, and then now you might be able to hold for 20 seconds of an interval because you regressed down. But then spending 20 seconds in your tuck now will give you more exposure in that position, which will make your full back lever better. I don't know if everyone can relate to the back lever example, but taking the hard version, the easy version, piecing them together, and then looping it back into the harder version later down the line, basically is the short of it.
Yep, and that's really where I think calisthenics differentiates from standard weight training, is your progressions and regressions are all about manipulation of your body position. So you have to really have a good understanding of what makes it that incremental change to be just the right amount of a degree to be appropriate for your intention that day, whether the intention is more volume, whereas I would do like my second or third hardest version so that I can get enough of them in, or if it's I'm kind of doing my more high intensity or 1 to 2 reps of each hard skill that I'm trying to push the next phase of. Like that first handstand push-up, you're only really ever going to do one full one the first time. You're not just going to bang out 4 all of a sudden.
Yeah, there's ways to I call it like you're progressing and regressing at the same time. So like, let's say you have a skill, like you're at some certain level of it, but then you want to take it to the next notch. Well, then you scale the difficulty down to like the easiest version, and then you're doing it on maybe the rings for the first time instead of just doing it on the parallettes. So you go like, you take the easy version, but you've upgraded to the rings, which is the dynamic, and then you slowly build that back up. And then once you get to that point even again, you take it the next step, and then you regress it back. So then you're just climbing the ladder slowly but surely, but it's harder to measure for sure. But then you're always just flirting that line of like, so it's never like set in stone of like, oh, that's easier than that, and this is harder than that, and this like, it's like kind of like,
And each person's a little different because your leverages are going to be a little individual to you. Like I've got really long arms, so like my levers are challenging
We've got longer arms
in certain positions compared to others. I would have to check. I know my arm span is taller than I am.
I think
so
I would say mine
I'm
is
slightly longer wingspan than height.
Yeah, I think mine is, and then I feel like for things like planches and stuff, like trying to protract, and I feel like I can protract for ages, so then that makes me even longer.
Yep.
And I'm like, oh my god. Bench press, you see people just
I have such a huge bench press pad.
Finally find lockout,
So just understanding your own starting point, where you're at, and your progression, regression abilities. That's really where coming to class is helpful, because we can help you find those. And that's what we keep hearing is so hard about learning stuff on Instagram, is that those videos can only sometimes show you 3 to 4, maybe 5 progressions for that skill, whereas sometimes there's as many as 10 or 15 progressions to get to the full version of a skin the cat or a handstand push-up.
Yeah, I feel like those are so popular. Like 3 exercises to fix your shoulder, or 3 exercises to get your handstand, and it's like definitely more in depth than that. But then I've noticed there's some people now, they're starting to say like, here are 3 of my favorites, bop, 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 bop. And I'm like, oh, okay, actually I trust you way more now because you said it like that versus here's the 3 exercises you need, like as a blanket statement. It's like, really? Right. Like you haven't done anything to assess anybody, you don't know who you're talking to. But if you're like, these are 3 of my favorites, like this helps open your shoulders a bit. If you have tight shoulders, like the phrasing can be way different.
For sure. And I'm trying to figure out how we can put tips out there for certain things without falling into that trap. So something for you and I to keep exploring a little bit. Like it came up with a client earlier today about, we need to get Aaron's tips out there. How do you do these? And I'm like, well, the tips I'm giving you are very specific to you. So like me putting it out on the video as like, oh, for sciatic pain, here's an activation and here's a release. Do this, and let me know how it works for you. I have a hard time putting that out there because I'm like, there might actually be 6 different things I could recommend, but based on the situation, I'm going to go this one versus that one or that one.
Yeah. It's so subtle too, like during those one-on-one sessions. I feel like sometimes the client doesn't even realize that it is specific to them. It's just like, this is what he tells me to do. So then you go do it, but then someone else with the same problem, you might just direct them a different way. And you've solved the same problem, but with a different thing, and they're both like, oh yeah,
just put that on
my sciatic is better because of this guy, and it's like, yeah, but they don't even know the navigation and how many 45 things I thought of before I told them to do one thing.
I had my client this morning, the same one that I was just having the other conversation with. She was like, what do we got in store today? I was like, well, it depends on the answer to the question I'm about to ask you. She was like, oh, well, I feel this type of way. I'm like, all right, well, let's get in there.
We're going to do this type of stuff.
I always have something in mind of what I want to do that day, but I always have to ask the question to make sure that we can go that route, or am I going to have to tailor it just a little bit and pivot? But
which I guess that kind of brings us a bit more to, we talked about Return to Play last time, I think, and it's one of the things we keep hammering on, but essentially there's a lot of the corrective pieces within the classes that we try to implement, but then it just speaks to the value of the faster, more targeted results potentially of doing the one-on-ones and then entering like a Return to Play type class versus maybe calisthenics. You can only have so many ways to delegate it or adapt it to someone before it's like, it might just take longer to solve the same problem, or there's like different ways to go in and out of it. I don't know if you want to touch on it any further there, or
Yeah, I think it's the easiest way to understand where Return to Play comes in versus where our standard core classes come in. We have had a few clients already who have made comments about their chiropractors knowing and realizing that, like, you're holding the adjustments a lot better. I'm not having to fix you as much every time you come in, because they're doing a lot of these isometric movements now that really help build integrity to the spine and how much it can handle without being tossed out of alignment anymore. But the speed of which you could get those results if you go through our Return to Play program is going to be, I would definitely say, at least 2 to 3 times as fast, if not maybe even a little bit more, because you're going to have a much more targeted homework that you're going to do daily, maybe every other day, depending on where you're at in your tissue tolerance capacity.
Let's say maybe you're like, if we were calling it your lowest hanging fruit, I feel like is an easy way to think of it. We've done all the assessment pieces, so then we have a much clearer picture of what your lowest hanging fruit is. So then we just, okay, that's the easiest one to grab. Boom,
right away.
Okay, solve that one. Then now that's an instant win essentially. But then if you're in more of the generic class, it's like, all right, we're doing a squat. Oh, I see a little something funky here, but there hasn't been necessarily that in-depth assessment. So we can touch on what it is with the squat based on what we see in the moment, but it hasn't been like that deeper dive where it's like, oh, actually the lowest hanging fruit is this that we need to hit. We might be picking up higher fruits just because that's what we see in the class, and that's what related to that movement for the day, as opposed to like that targeted plan.
And it's sometimes hard to just fix that specific exercise. There's probably a corrective that we're going to want to give that person in order to make that movement better, which is another thing. The session I had this morning is proving very valuable today. She realized how much better her kettlebell deadlift felt this morning after doing a couple of different activations on some other muscle groups. She was like, that was an amazing, whatever the trio we just did, it was a night and day difference in how she felt that movement, and just opening up the ability to execute the full range to what I was asking her. Essentially, the problem was she couldn't keep her knees outside enough for the sumo variation that we were going for, but these couple activations that we did got her hips to relax enough to where the second set she opened up quite a bit, and by the third set she was where I wanted her to be. So it was a good just illustration for her to see again why we do some of these circuits that we do. She was like, gosh, this feels easy, the load that we were doing, because she only had like a 35-pound kettlebell, like it wasn't a ton of weight. I was like, it's because we're working on positioning today and you've had these couple of issues come back in your hip because she tried running again, and it was maybe just a little bit too soon. So we had just one of those minor speed bumps where we had to kind of step back, do a couple correctives, make sure that full range is accessible again. But she realized, she's like, okay, I get why we were doing it with such light weight today. Definitely there was a movement issue happening again that needed to be addressed. So that's really what our Return to Play program is about, is helping you understand what it is that we're doing, not just doing what we're putting in front of you.
Exactly, yeah. Which, like, theoretically that could be done in class. Then the issue you run into is time.
I have 12 people potentially that all are expecting some attention. So if it takes me more than 30 seconds to solve or give you a hint of something, then it's probably something that we need to address in a one-on-one situation so that we're not detracting from other people in class.
And you're doing maybe 3 exercises to feed back into the deadlift, but then those 3 exercises takes a long time to do, but it's the class, so then you have other stuff to apply it to. You can't just do it for the deadlift for that one person. So then
because you would get these 2 correctives, you would get those 2 correctives, you'd have this one, you're fine, you can play with that other skill. So it would get too differentiated.
Which I do try to do that, but then it's still the time component, where you've spent an hour with one lady fixing that and navigating like this little tweak here, a little tweak there. That's the kind of that targeted approach where it's like, and you probably didn't even really know that you were gonna have to do all that stuff when you walked in. So then
And then I like those moments coming up in class sometimes, because it is a little educational moment for everyone else to hear, because maybe 3 other of them do have the same challenge, and they'll be like, oh, okay, well that sounds like something I should probably do also. So it is a little bit of an opportunity for us to put some of that education into the regular class curriculum, but it's going to, again, just be in a much more generalized fashion versus specifically for you, right? So
super cool.
I think our semi-private Return to Play classes should be showing up on our schedule in January, hopefully. We have a number of clients who I think are ready for that. So we're going to be implementing that, trying to find out which windows we're officially going to do. But if you did come on to our Return to Play journey, the first part is an assessment, 5 sessions total. First one's more of a consultation. Then you get 4 more movement-focused sessions, all built into that assessment phase. And then there's the one-on-one component, which you just heard us talking about one of my clients who is in that. But next stage would be semi-private coaching, which we would have between 4 and 6 Return to Play clients executing their individualized program on a platform / near the weight platform that we have, so that the coach on staff will be able to help with any questions, form adjustments, or program alterations that they may not be 100% familiar with. They can have someone that can, facilitate any of those questions. But the goal with that semi-private training is to build autonomy so that you can eventually do your training on your own, which is where we want everyone to eventually be, is fully capable and autonomous in their healing journey. So that would be the last component that we have yet to officially release, but I do think that should be coming very soon.
Yeah, January, yep.
So keep an eye out for that. Other than that, I think that's...
Also, it's a bit of a unique approach in terms of, rather than like clinging on to one-on-one clients forever, just trying to sell more packages and sell more packages, like starting to release them into the semi-private training. So that's starting to break the mold a bit. And like what you see in trainers sometimes is that like scarcity mindset where it's like, oh, my clients. And it's like, no, we don't want clients forever, because that means that you haven't done your job as a trainer or a coach or whatever. So the idea is to get them out into that, make them learn enough to where they can execute, and then take even the next step. So maybe they take classes, maybe they don't take classes, maybe they go back to running marathons or doing triathlons or whatever. Or
maybe they decide they have a new skill, handstand, be it another calisthenics, cool position, freestyle, whatever it might be. Then we can go into our other one-on-one training, which is more just movement coaching, focused on those skills and the weight training that would accompany those skills in a much more standard fashion versus a prehab, rehab focused fashion. So we're happy to be there and help you progress even farther, but Return to Play specifically does have that kind of release you once you get out of pain, unless you decide that you want to tackle those next skills. But our classes is the next logical step where you can have fun with the rest of the community doing those more collective centered.
And it's still some of those corrective pieces is built in, like we said. And then if you know by now you have some specific things, X, Y, Z, you just integrate that in, and you know when you need it, when you don't need it. You mentioned handstands, so there's a couple handstand classes on the schedule also.
Yep. There's intro, which is...
Yeah, maybe like just breaking down the terminology, because they're all a bit different. Intro to inversions.
That's right, it's intro to inversions.
Yeah. So I think it's distinguishing between what is a handstand, hand balancing, and inversions, I'd say.
So let's start with intro to inversions. Yeah. That one would probably be your first entry point, because you don't even put your hands on the ground a whole bunch. You use a feet up device, which allows you to rest on your shoulders, but you're upside down. Your head kind of fits in between the hole. And you're just working on understanding what your feet are doing up above you and learning how to accept your head being the lowest point of your body, which for a lot of people who haven't been upside down in many, many years, the first thing they notice is that pressure that builds up in your head, because they just don't have the circulatory strength yet to pump that blood out and rebalance that. So that's kind of the first thing you're working on in that class, playing with the feet positions. You might get a little bit fun with some of the shapes. You're also going to start to experience a little bit of like wrist mobility and some prep as you're resting, so that it's starting to help prep you for the hand component that comes with the next level of class, which is
I'd say even, I know intro, specifically class intro to inversions would be the feet up device and that kind of stuff. But then it's like extrapolating out more, you see things like forearm balances. Like a lot of people are coming in with forearm balances and different things. That we would classify as inversion work, but without going into handstand just yet, or like hand balance. Like it's not really a hand-based thing.
Right.
So then there's like different skills between actually being on the hands and then still balancing upside down in different ways, where like you might see some of that in yoga and things like that.
For sure.
But I think That's kind of sometimes a confusing point for people is these different forearm positions and forearm stand and this and that. And
then like sometimes you go triangle, sometimes you go straight.
Yeah, like that'd be like, I see that more in the yoga people. But then if we're going into, what would be the next one? Intro to handstands or intro to hand balancing. Now you can assume that you're still upside down, but now we're specifying more of time on the hands rather than just being upside down and with the feet up or the forearms. At least that's my breakdown of it.
Yep. And then you have the actual hand balancing class where we're doing handstands, crow, frog, holds. There might even be some little bits of locomotive in there. So it really helps build up the capacity from whatever level you are currently at. We probably have a class that can meet you there. The animal flow class even dabbles with a good amount of hand balancing and wrist preparation, I would say, just in general. If you feel like you have weak wrists, the animal flow class will definitely help build that capacity up very fast. We do lots of wrist mobilizations, but then we also do spend at least 45 minutes on the hands directly. So there should be no reason to let the weak wrists get the best of you. Pretty much every class we have strengthens the wrists in a different type of way, whether you're hanging from or you're moving a mace around while you're gripping something, right? Or your hands are flat on the floor.
Yeah.
All of it builds up wrist capacity in a time.
Yeah, it can be a lot. It can be a lot on the wrists. You got to get that prep in for sure.
And if you do notice, actually, anyone who notices they get soreness in the wrists, you don't have to do a full ice bath. If you can just dunk your wrists in some ice water, it can help just flush out the inflammation that will let you continue to practice that day until you've built up that tolerance to be a specific degree that you don't need that anymore.
Yeah, I've been trying to focus on getting my hands in. Like for a while, I would keep my hands out just because I was a baby, and then like I'm more tolerated now, so like no problem now. But like I can tell a difference. And I make it a point, like, my hands and my wrists need to be in the cold.
Yeah, especially with all the stuff you do on your hands, for sure.
I was like, but I think it does make a difference for sure.
I've noticed that with the cold weather, I've definitely been a bigger wimp about getting in the cold plunge, that's for sure. I'm hitting the sauna a lot more frequently than the cold.
It's been nice the last couple of days.
Yeah, weirdly warm Christmas for us. Looks like this year. Last couple of things, I wanted to make sure we plug the Return to Play workshop that we're going to be doing in January. That's going to be probably your next best opportunity to come see what that program is about. We'll be doing a couple of demonstrations along with some of the lecture talks that are involved with the Return to Play client journey. There are about 10 talks that we have spread throughout the first 4 to 5 sessions with you. So
I'd say minimum.
Yeah, minimum. Those are kind of just the scripted ones, and then we have the individual ones that we kind of speckle in as you need. So keep an eye out for the event link to that. It will be, I think, the second Saturday of January. I forget if that's the 10th or the 11th, but
10th, I think, is what
I think it's the 10th.
Yeah.
That sounds about right. At 12 o'clock. Hope to see you guys there. Members, you will get a discount code. Make sure you see the front desk for that. And the last thing would be, we are still looking for some highly qualified calisthenics coaches. So if there is anyone looking to submit resumes or let us know that you would be interested, we are looking for some freestyle coaches and other static athletes that may want to do some workshops. So reach out to us. Do you have anything else you might want to throw out there before we wrap up?
No, I don't think so. I don't know exactly what's going to be in the workshop, but it'll be valuable.
We're going to make sure it's worth your time, so don't miss out on it. It's just a matter of what can we consolidate into a 2-hour chunk in order to dish out in a proper fashion so it's not too overbearing.
Yeah, I think I'll probably do some whiteboard stuff at the beginning, but then try to get moving and show people how it applies to them a little more specifically. That way there's a little bit of talking in the education part because we could do that in the program anyways. But yeah, then starting to see, because many people that we go through, they have no idea how it's affecting them. They're just like, oh, I'm good, I'm pretty strong. And like sometimes those strong people that can do a bunch of the moves are actually have deficiencies in other things because they're not training certain positions or whatever, or they're compensating a lot and then they're overdeveloped in a position. So then try to not necessarily exploit the participants, but like showcase like, oh, there's things to develop.
Absolutely. So stay tuned for that. We will see you guys there. That is all for us today. We will see you next time on the Return to Play podcast. Take it easy.